Hi coaches, Lee Dunn here with another game of the week for you. This week we're looking at a collection of 1v1s. So the way I'll run through this is to show you how they work. You should see that easily with the arrows anyway. But then I'll also kind of talk to you about some of the limitations and some of the issues you may face. So we'll start with game one up here on the top left. Ball starts with a blue player, they'll dribble in, and then they can look to cut either to the left or to the right. Now this is a great little practice for working on this player's body shape. So as they dribble in, it's great for encouraging fakes. So they look right and then dive off to the left. Really good way to lose that pressuring defender. You can progress this by having the player start with the ball, the red player start with the ball, and they could play the ball into the side, they could drop it over their head or anything fun like that to challenge the blue player to then get after the ball really quickly. It also encourages the red to keep after them. Now, of course, the blue player starts with the ball, so technically the blue player should find this pretty easy, and that's the idea, especially with younger players. But as you start looking towards older players, you can start challenging this red player a little more, make it a little easier for them to get after the ball, making it harder for the blue. Now looking at game two, the red player starts with the ball directly opposite the blue, and their reward in here is for a good cut either to the left and to the right that creates just enough space to score. Now, of course, remembering as we always do, we relate to these goals in games as being space, as being players, as some kind of outlet from the pressure that's going to be coming in from the blue player. Now, you can make this harder by having the blue start with the ball and make what we call a good bad pass, where they fire the ball into the red, and then the challenge on their touch is even more so. And especially with some of the older players, again, they'll be clever, they'll find a quick and easy way around this. You can also just move this yellow cone in here, move it closer so that it's harder for the red to simply cut away from the blue, because sometimes if they're too far apart, a bad touch will be rewarded just as much as a good touch will be rewarded. So just a note to follow on this if you're watching, seeing how easy it is for the players, because of course remember also that they're soon going to lose interest if they're not being challenged too much. So you'll see here in game three, we've got two different starting points, and I like this one because it gives the players the option of where they want to start. Hey, where do you want to start? Simple. The lefties, you might start finding them having a favourite position of kicking out on the left here, try and dribble down. And the thing I really like about the starting positions here is it starts the players wide. And this width really encourages them to have the defender attack them. So as, let's say, our blue player here on the left, it brings the red out of position. And this really helps with our blue player's vision, knowing that this space is now going to be taken, but they've got space to cut inside. And we've worked on our cuts in both game one and game two to create a little bit of space. And in this time, instead of the goals being left or right, the goal is forward, but the reward for the right cut is to be able to get the ball in the goal. And again, it gives the players options, so we're not just telling them how to play or what to play, we're saying to them which side of the play do you want, which side of the cones do you want to start on. Now again, a lot of 1v1s will start with the player right here in the middle, and I just like to change it up a little bit for them, that they're not always running straight at the defender, because what you'll find is a lot of the play will take place in the middle, and their cuts will take them away from goal, and that's not what we want. We want to try and get closer to the goal. And finally, looking at game four, changing the dynamic of the game here a little bit. So instead of playing directly across, as you might often see, and as you'll see in a lot of my games of the weeks, changing the dynamic of the field so we have wide corners. And the idea behind the wide corners is it gives the players space to go out with the ball, drawing the defender. So as you'll see here, we could have the blue come out into the corners. Red will then come out, and again, the reward for using cuts and fakes is to cut back inside, and then the goal being right open for us. Just making players aware of where they're playing and not just generally playing straight forwards to a goal, but using the difference in space. And as a coach, these are the moments where you can encourage players to take that ball a little wider, because then it creates space down the middle for the players to play. So as a coach, depending on how you're going to run this, you can find yourself in the middle right here. Problem is that as you're looking at game one, you may not see what's going on in game four, but you can move yourself up and down these lines and across the top too. Now, you could absolutely have all of these 8 players playing game one. Then you could move on to game two and just quickly move the cones to set them up, as you see in game two there and there, move the goals to game four, and so on. Or you could have, as I like to say, World Series Game 1, World Series Game 2, World Series Game 3 and Game 4. So that you're moving the players on, they know where they're going, they know what's expected of them. Almost like a group workout where you show the players what each station is going to be, explain the numbers, and then move them on. Now, what happens if you have 12 players. Well, then we add a player in here, we can add a player in there, we'll add a spare player right here by this game, and then we can have the next player on the cone right here. So there are ways that you can make this work, and the fun thing about having 3 players in each group is that they're going to play against someone different every time. So if you're looking game 1, blue player goes and scores, perfect, goal, thank you very much. Now he will move away once he's scored, so the red player will play against the new blue player. So it's just someone different every time. It's a different challenge for them, it's a different experience instead of playing against that same old player. Now if you do have 8 players or even 9 players, you can just find one group to put in the one player. And the way I would work with this is to have balanced players. So same skill players. Try not to have your weaker players playing with your stronger players, because it's easy for your stronger player, it's demoralizing for your weaker player, and no one really learns anything. One of my favorite ways to identify this is to ask the players to get into pairs, especially if you've never worked with a team before. Get them into pairs. Generally best players partner with best players. Quiet players are generally left over at the end, so they'll partner up as well, and that'll tend to give you a strong idea of who's who in your team. So a nice little easy way of getting your players set there. Now we play for 1 minute. You'll see I've highlighted 1 minute up in here. And the idea of the 1 minute is that it's hard work playing 1v1. We give them a 1 minute round, and then we just switch, or we stop, and we give them a 30-second, whether it's a coaching moment or if it's just a breather to reset and grab the soccer balls, and then we'll play again for another minute. And I like to do 1 or 2 minutes on each station and then move them on. The idea being that it stays fresh, it stays exciting, and then the 1 minute time limit gives them an opportunity to really push themselves, knowing that there's going to be an end to it. If you just let them play, it'll start really high, and then it'll kind of tail off once they realize that there's no end in sight, once they get tired. So playing with these 1 minute time limits, they know how hard they're going to work, they know what's expected of them, and they can push themselves to play. Those players that aren't playing so hard, those are the moments where you say, hey, you've got 1 minute of play, you're losing out, you're missing out, look at all these other players using their touches. And of course with higher intensity means more reps, more play, gives a chance of more touches on the ball. So to wrap this up, you could be the only one on the field as the coach. As I said, you could find yourself in here coaching and managing. That's not a problem. Now, if you're going to do coaching, actual individual technique, then find yourself in the right positions, whether it's right there, whether it's right here. You can find yourself on the side of game 4 right here, or of course right in here in game 2. These are the right positions where you can find yourself watching the game and seeing what you need to see. I'm not really worried about this guy right now. I'm worried about this guy in game 2 because he or she has the ball. They're the ones that we're working on the cuts and the fakes. So I really care about what's going on right here. After 1 minute, they'll do their switch and they'll all get the chance of having the ball at their feet. But your voice, your control of the group is really going to determine the success. If you have an assistant coach, great. Or if you as your assistant coach will be able to manage, let's say, for example, game 3 and game 4, and you can simply manage game 1 and game 2. So certainly consider how you are going to set your field up. These are all 10 by 10 little boxes. They're not very big and they don't require much. I've used pop-up goals there or bow nets, but you can simply use cones. You can use whatever it takes just to get the idea of goals. I prefer having goals because scoring goals is what matters to the kids that are playing soccer. Thanks very much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know.